I'm Christine Jacobs. I'm the Executive Director of Represent PA. We are the PAC in Pennsylvania that is dedicated to supporting pro-choice Democratic women who are running for the state legislature. In the 10 or more years that we've been in existence, we've helped to take, it's not just us, but we've helped to take the legislature. First of all, it flipped after the last election for the first time in more than 10 years. We have a Democratic majority headed by a woman speaker, Joanna McClinton. And then Joanna McClinton, we supported in her first primary in 2015 when she first ran for office, and she ran against 3 men, and we supported her. And in that time, we've gone from having under 20% women in the state legislature to the Democratic caucus is now 36% women. And we believe that after this election, the Democratic caucus in both the House and the Senate will be up over 40% women. And we're very proud, and we're very proud because that's changing the dialogue and changing the tone of the conversation in Harrisburg. Next slide, please. Our endorsed candidates, as I said, we're trying to expand the majority this year. The caucus, the House caucus, of which we have 2 of their senior staff members with us today, tiers, figuring out which races have the most Democrats, which are the best chances of winning. We support some tier 1 candidates that you see listed here, and we also support some tier 2 candidates. And as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 of the other candidates on the call right now who we've also been very happy to support, Robin Skibber and Rain right now. Next slide, please. There are critical volunteer needs. We'll start with this, and this is why I'm asking you all, what are you doing? They're looking for poll workers. I'm working election day. As a matter of fact, I'm a machine operator or something in Fishtown in Philadelphia. They're looking for people are looking for canvas observers. You can contact the voter protection group of part of PA Dems. Looking for early vote monitors. You can contact any of our candidates and volunteer to go work for them. You can contact the Harris office and go door to door for them. There's lots of things to do, and today you're going to hear about a lot more. Next slide, please. So what happens? Why we're so interested in making sure that everybody's looking at all sides of the ballot, and from the top to the bottom. In 2018, after Trump, there was a big Trump backlash because we'd had 2 years of him at that point. And the Democrats had 34 challengers and had 20 wins. It was a great year for us. It's a great year for women in Pennsylvania because we elected a number of exceedingly strong women. That was also the year after that election is when Joanna McClinton became the minority chair of the House Dems. In 2020, in the Biden versus Trump showdown, we didn't have quite as many winners. Pennsylvania ended straight ticket voting that year, and there were a lot of issues. 2022, after Roe, we had some more wins, and in 2024, we have 26 challenger Dems on the ballot, down ballot. And so we're looking to see how we can secure their victories with a Harris victory. It all works together. What I love is that a lot of our women, right after the Harris took over the top of the ticket from Biden, a number of the women that we support said that when they would knock on doors, people actually answered because they weren't getting many answers before. And also they would get comments from people before of, oh yeah, I know I have to go vote. Right after the change, people would throw open the door and say, I'm going to vote for Harris and I'm so excited. And so then our candidate was able to say, and you should vote for us too. Next slide, please. So today we're going to talk about several different kinds of opportunities for you to make sure that you're doing all you can to secure victories. I'm really pleased to have Kadita Kenner. We've looked for a reason to have her on for a while. She's the founding CEO of the New Pennsylvania Project Education Fund, which is a C3, and the New Pennsylvania Project. She's co-chair of Why Courts Matter, and she has a long history of doing activist work and being a voice. Next slide. We also have Justin Lotito, who's Deputy Campaigns Director for the PA HDCC, the House Democratic Campaign Committee, and he's held a variety of roles in Democratic politics in Pennsylvania. We also have Sawyer Neal, who is the Organizing and Campaigns Director for the House Caucus. He's been with the House Democratic Campaign Committee for 5 years in a lot of different roles. And so we figured that they were the two people who could really come on for the caucus and talk about how you can volunteer, what you should be doing, and how they see Pennsylvania. Next slide. So with that, I give you Kadita Kenner to talk a little bit about, I've asked her to, because we haven't had them on before, I've asked her to talk about what the organization is, what their aims are, how busy they're going to be in the next couple of weeks, and how you might help. So take it away, Kadita. You've got 15 minutes or 10 or 15 minutes. So
okay, thank you so much.
If you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. She may be able to answer them during her talk, or we'll ask later.
Sounds good. Thank you, Christine. Good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. Good morning. Good morning. So let's get right into this. We don't have a lot of time to waste here. So yes, my name is Kadita Kenner. I'm the founding CEO of the New Pennsylvania Project and the New PA Project Education Fund. And I want to talk to this group about the New Pennsylvania Project this morning. If you're unaware about our organization, we were founded in May of 2021. So we're like 3.5 years old at this point. And to this point, we have helped more than 40,000 Pennsylvanians get registered to vote. So we're a statewide organization, and we do this work year round. And so the mission of this organization is that we primarily focus on disenfranchised and historically neglected communities. And that means we are in Black, Indigenous, other folks of color communities, immigrant communities, and absolutely focusing on the youth as well, which we consider under 35 years old. And we want to make sure that all these Pennsylvanians who are eligible to vote and not registered to vote are actually getting registered to vote. And so you should also know that we have Speaker McClinton and State Representative Patty Kim both sit on our board. As well, on the C3 board, we have the former Secretary of State Lee Chapman on that board. And so we have a lot of folks who really support the work that we've been doing for the last 3.5 years. And what makes us different than other organizations that kind of do this work is that we do it year round. We do voter registration year round. After this election is over, and hopefully it's all certified without drama, we will be back out there in the communities on November 10th, registering folks to vote for the primary election of next year. So this doesn't stop for us. And another great thing about the organization being statewide is that we continue to grow. We are focused this year, we've expanded to grow into Erie, into Beaver, into Lawrence County. We're in Allegheny County. We're in the whole capital region, so including York and Lancaster, Dauphin, Cumberland, Lebanon. We've even gone down further. And we're also now in the collar counties, all the collar counties being Bucks and Chester and Delaware, Montgomery County. We've expanded greatly up into the Northeast. So we are now in Lackawanna and Luzerne, Northampton, Monroe, Lehigh, and Philadelphia. And so, and that doesn't mean that just because we're not there, doesn't mean we're not assisting in other places. I've been known to drive out to Clarion and do some work out in Clarion and Elk and all other places that could use assistance, because we do believe that everyone who's been untapped needs to be spoken to. So that's one of the differences about our organization is this work doesn't stop for us. It is year round. And we are a staff. You'll see on the next slide here. You'll see that we're a very growing staff. And so 2.1 million Pennsylvanians, that's the number. 2.1 million Pennsylvanians are eligible to vote, but not registered or have not voted in so long that they are in severe risk of being dropped off their voter rolls. That's the big number, 2.1. And that's why we exist. It's to get all of these folks registered to vote. And if our name sounds familiar, it is because we are named in homage of the New Georgia Project and the incredible work of Stacey Abrams and Nsé Ufot, who founded that organization to get Georgia registered to vote. If you don't know this, Georgia is a 95% voter registration rate. 95% of all Georgians are registered to vote. We are not there here in Pennsylvania. We are hovering around the 86% mark, and that is why you have these 2.1 million who need to be reached out to in their communities and engaged. And it truly is an institutional failure. Pennsylvania ranks in the bottom 30 percentile of all states in the country as it relates to ease of voting and getting registered to vote. Where do we hover around? We hover around Arkansas and Louisiana. Here we are, the birthplace of American democracy, and we rank bottom 30 percentile at ease of getting registered to vote and actually casting a ballot. I think about the great progressive bastions of North Carolina and Georgia, right, that have easier times actually casting a ballot than Pennsylvanians do. So on the next slide, you will see that we are a team of folks that really care about this mission. We had our retreat this past summer. This is just some of our staff. So we're a staff of 80 at this moment. 3 years ago, it was just myself. It was me running around the state with a couple fellows. And today we are a staff of 80. This is most of the full-time staff and some of the part-time staff. From both organizations. On the left is the New PA Project Education Fund, the C3 organization, doing tremendous work doing voter registration efforts. And on the right-hand side, the C4 staff doing similar work. On the next slide, I'm just showing pictures going forward here for my next 7 minutes or so. I'm just going to show you some pictures because I want to tell the story about what's happening on the ground right now. And I see in the chat box that many of you are on the ground doing this work. Here in the green shirt is Nikki. Nikki is on our team. She's been with us about 5 months now. You should know that our organization is a second chance organization. So we believe in hiring those who are formerly incarcerated. We believe in hiring those that are in recovery. We believe in hiring those who need a second chance because these folks are the best at this work. They are the trusted messenger on the ground. And Nikki will tell you anytime you speak to her that she's currently in recovery. She lives in Harrisburg. And now that she has joined this team, she is no longer unhoused. She has her own apartment for the first time in a very long time. And she is working the program. And she is out here registering folks that most won't engage. And she's able to communicate with them in a way that others can't because she has lived this life. And she's able to communicate and get folks who would never have registered to vote to get registered to vote by telling her story while on the ground and getting them registered to vote. So that's Nikki. On the next slide, you'll see another, one of our staff members on the left is Connie Santos. Connie lives in Allentown, and she's our regional organizing director for the Lehigh Valley and Poconos area. And she started with us as a full-time staff member, a canvasser, and has been promoted to regional organizing director since she's been with us now more than 2 years. And this is her with registering to vote Miss Maria. Miss Maria is 95 years old. And Miss Maria got registered to vote by Connie, and this will be the first time Miss Maria has ever cast a ballot this year at 95 years old. And this is right after the July 21st announcement that the change was happening at the top of the ticket for the Democratic candidate. And so Connie has registered lots of folks there in the Lehigh Valley, her and her team. I was with them last night because they've traveled down to Philadelphia to help out Philadelphia with a week to, less than 2 weeks to go to get folks registered. And we have, as an organization, registered 2 100-year-old women to vote who had never voted before. One of the 100-year-old women we registered outside of a grocery store where she was still driving, still shopping, still pushing a buggy, and registered her out in the parking lot. And when asked why she had never registered to vote in her years, she said no one had ever asked her. And so we registered her to vote outside of that grocery store. All right, next slide, you'll see this gentleman here. This is in the Pembroke low-income housing units there outside of Allentown. And this gentleman, Connie, again, the regional organizing director for Lehigh Valley Poconos, came across this gentleman before July 21st when she was engaging that neighborhood. And she came across this gentleman before July 21st and tried to get him registered to vote. And he said, I'm not interested. There's really nobody that I really want to support in this election. So I'm really not interested in getting registered to vote. And he specifically said to Connie, I'm waiting for this country to put a woman in the highest office. And maybe when that happens, maybe I'll come out and get registered to vote. Well, what did Connie do? She found this man on the ground. This is a picture of her on July 22nd. Went back out to Pembroke, found the gentleman out on the ground and registered him to vote. And that is a picture of him with a pen in his hand, registering himself to vote. The next picture is probably my favorite one of all. And this is the last picture I'll show you today. This is Janitha. She is our Director of Staff and Culture. She lives in Aliquippa, Beaver County, and she's part of this team, recent addition to the team in the last 3 months. And this is her second day on the job. And I'm with her. We're in Erie. We're up in Erie. This is her second day on the job. We're in Erie knocking on doors, trying to get folks registered to vote in Erie. And as we knocked on a door, those of you who have ever knocked on doors and canvassed, you know there's some doors you probably don't want to knock on. So this gentleman here, Gustavo, who I'll never forget as long as I live, we knocked on his door. I'm known to knock on doors you probably shouldn't. And why would most people probably not knock on his door? He had two barking dogs on the patio and a fence that did not look like they were holding those dogs in. But knocked on that door anyway. And I'm absolutely glad that I did knock on that door, because out came Gustavo looking like this. And Gustavo came out and we asked him if he was registered to vote. And Gustavo said, "No, I'm not registered to vote. I can't." And when anyone says to us, "I can't," and I'm looking at them outside in the world, I know exactly what they mean. And Gustavo was formerly incarcerated. And so Gustavo was under the impression that he was ineligible to vote and that he would never be able to vote in this country, in Pennsylvania, in this country. And when we provided the civic education to Gustavo that says, "Gustavo, your feet have hit the street. We are talking to you. This is your house." He said, "Yes, we are talking to you outside of your house. You are eligible to vote in Pennsylvania, unless your felony conviction had something to do with voter fraud. At that point, you'd have to wait for 5 years to get registered to vote after you are re-entried. You are eligible to vote in Pennsylvania." And I want to tell this audience today that there are so many formerly incarcerated Pennsylvanians who have no idea that they are eligible to vote in the Commonwealth. And not just those who are formerly incarcerated, but those who are currently incarcerated, awaiting sentences and all types of other things, that are still currently eligible to vote while incarcerated. This is a huge population, obviously, in Pennsylvania, because we incarcerate a lot of people in Pennsylvania. And so there's a lot of folks who are returning citizens in Pennsylvania, and they need to be registered to vote, and they need to be provided the accurate information about their voting rights and their freedom to vote, because they have been misled, disinformed, and lied to, just straight up lied to by many, to let them know that they are not eligible to vote. And I believe, and our organization believes, that those closest to the pain must be closest to the power. And how you get that power is by casting a ballot in every single election, twice a year, up and down the entire ballot. And so while we provide that civic education to Gustavo, whose native language is not English and had to do this in Spanish, and thankfully, 7 years of Spanish in school helps, when we're on the ground, we were able to get this man registered to vote. And I did check on his voter status just last week to make sure that that voter registration application turned into a registration. And Gustavo is registered to vote and will be voting this November. I tell this story about Gustavo because he was the second door that Janitha and I knocked on her second day on the job. And as we walked away from Gustavo's house and headed towards the next house, we heard Gustavo go back into his house and say, "Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. I can vote in this election." And we left, Janitha, obviously on her second day of the job, left very inspired, knowing that the work that we're doing is changing what's happening on the ground and hopefully changing lives. So you can stop the PowerPoint presentation. Thank you for that. And I just want to say that this organization, this work, voter registration, this year has been very difficult. Very difficult. As an organization that has registered tens of thousands of Pennsylvanians, we thought in a presidential election year was going to be a great opportunity to register lots and lots of Pennsylvanians. Not so much. Prior to July 21st, we came across lots of voter apathy, disgust, just not wanting to be part of the political process. I am telling this group that is a PAC that we were very concerned about what was truly going to happen, that we were going to work our behinds off for maybe a result that was going to be heartbreaking. I'll tell you that this year we have registered more people unaffiliated that registered as unaffiliated folks choosing no political party than ever before. Upwards, some places of 30% of those who are registering to vote choose to be unaffiliated. And they do that because they're not in love with either of the major political parties. They don't believe that the system is working. And we do not cast shade or doubt on these individuals because there's many reasons to believe that it is not. And so they are choosing to be unaffiliated, even when provided the civic education that in Pennsylvania, as a closed primary state, you will be ineligible to vote in a primary election. They don't care. They choose not to belong to a political party. So obviously, those that we register as an organization that believes in, needing to raise the minimum wage, and needing to have fair housing and affordable housing, and needing to have equitable funding to our public schools. So when you are an organization that believes things such as that, and then you have Fannie Lou Hamer, and others inside of your literature. Obviously, the type of folks that we do a lot of registration for. And so we do register mostly the largest percent is Democrats, closely followed by unaffiliated folks in this work. And 64% of those we register identify as belonging to a community of color and under the age of 35. So those are the communities that we're centering to do this work. It's been a very big challenge. We had a huge spike in voter registrations after the July 21st announcement, with more people wanting to get involved, and that is on both sides of the aisle, wanting to get more involved in what's going to happen here on November 5th. And we know that as an organization, as we finish the voter registration efforts, we will then join GOTV efforts on October 22nd, because the last day to get registered to vote is the 21st. So we're going to do voter registration into the absolutely last moment. And then we will flip the switch and we will do GOTV in all of our focused counties beginning on October 22nd. And we plan to knock tens of thousands of doors with a concentration in the collar counties. And Allegheny County has the biggest need. So if you are folks here that want someone who wants to volunteer, I'm giving you this information right now to say that Allegheny County has the biggest need in this moment. So if you have any free time or abilities to get out there or want to do some work, head out towards Allegheny County. Elections are won on the margins, and they need to be run up in various places, and Allegheny County being one of those that needs a lot of support on the ground. There are communities who have not had one single touch at their door so far, like Wilkinsburg and other places have not been touched. So I leave you with the fact that you have a big team at the Pennsylvania Budget. I'm saying the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center, my last organization. But yeah, there's a big team here at the New Pennsylvania Project who is out here knocking doors in communities, in places people don't want to go, talking to folks that most would not, engaging them and getting them to get registered to vote. And it should be recognized that those most recently registered to vote are the least likely to actually show up to the polls. And so not only do we register these folks to vote, but we stay in constant contact with them, phone calls, emails, lookalike audiences on social media, all the ways that we can stay in contact with those that we register to vote to actually get them to the polls. And so with that, I thank you all for the work that you all do. I see in the chat, lots of you doing some excellent work. And more about the New Pennsylvania Project, you can go to our website, newpaproject.org. We're very active on social media, especially on Facebook. And you can see the work that is being done, and we'll continue to do. And we will be around after GOTV to either defend democracy in our elections ahead of the December 11th decision of whether or not we're going to certify this election, and all of the weather, getting folks registered to vote ahead of the May 2025 primary, because courts matter, and there's 3 Supreme Court justices up for retention in Pennsylvania.
So Kadita, somebody asked in the chat, why Allegheny? Why is that? Is it because you've had fewer people there and you're got more work to do, or is it because you just know that there's more need there right now?
There's more need there right now. There's not as many, organizations like our C4 organizations. It's been very troubling trying to staff up, or even ourselves as an organization, to maintain good staff out in Allegheny County. So there is a need of the number of people who need to be out there knocking doors. From organizations like ours that don't coordinate with political parties and don't coordinate with political candidates, right? Doing this C4 work as an independent expenditure. And so we know that the numbers just aren't there. And we're lots of us looking at sending our Philadelphia team out to Allegheny County, sending our Harrisburg team out to Allegheny County to get those doors, because the capacity is not there where it is in other places. We're going to knock on millions of doors in Philadelphia. Right now, we're not going to knock on millions of doors. And Allegheny County actually has more votes to go into the till than Philadelphia City itself.
So I hope those of you who are on from Allegheny County know she's speaking to you, but also if you have friends there and people you can go stay with, that's also, you know, something you can do. If you have a home, and as we said earlier in the call, if you have a home when you've got some room, one of the things you could do to help the cause is provide housing for somebody. Just give them a place to stay. Steffi Kirshner, I'm looking at you. I know you're in Pittsburgh, and I know you had a wonderful event for Represent recently. So who do you know who could be helping Kadita in Allegheny County? Sorry to call on you, but you know, you look so nice and like I should call on you today. So any other questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Kadita will stay with us to the end. But I'm so happy to hear about your organization and all that you're doing for us in Pennsylvania. I just had no idea how much you were doing for those who, like Gustavo, who thought that they couldn't vote. And I found that wonderful and very, as somebody who believes in voting, I just love his hallelujahs. So it made me happy. So let's move on. Let's move on to a very partisan side of the discussion today. Sawyer and Justin from the House Democratic Caucus, it's yours. What do you want people to do besides go out and vote? What would you have us do? Tell us what the caucus is doing.
With
I don't know.
pleasure. Hey, would it be possible for me to like screen share some slides?
Yes, it is. So Tiffany, please make Sawyer a co-host.
Right, perfect. Looks like I'm in. Uh, First up, thank you all for hopping on today. Thank you for having me and Justin. It is a pleasure to see such a fired up group of progressive activists around the state. Just want to talk a little bit about the HDCC, what our organization does, and how y'all can get involved, especially as we, make the transition to get out the vote phase of the campaign cycle. As far as what the HDCC is, Christine's point, we're an extremely partisan organization. We are the political arm of the Pennsylvania House Democratic Caucus, which means we're dedicated to two real goals and one big mission. Two goals being protecting incumbent Democratic state reps in Harrisburg, second being flipping Republican held seats, and the one mission is maintaining and expanding the Democratic majority in Harrisburg. We do that in a couple different ways. Namely our service provision organization. We help out campaigns directly, provide services to them across a number of key departments. I'm the head of the organizing campaigns department. So we provide field assistance such as voter targeting, structure for field programs, as well as campaign staffing. We also provide support to campaigns across finance, communications, and digital campaigning. As far as top targets, totally on point at the beginning of the slide for Democratic women in particular. Our top flip opportunities that we're looking at are Anna Payne, Sarah Agerton, Hadley Haas, Elizabeth Morrow, and Anna Thomas, and cannot forget expansion districts such as Fern Laird up in the Northeast, Angela Gerall in Allegheny and Washington counties, Eleanor Breslin in Bucks County, and Stephanie Wraiths in the Lehigh Valley. We have honestly a fantastic class of candidates and campaigns across the Commonwealth this cycle, and we are looking to expand majority. In terms of the field department in particular, we've been campaigning very aggressively this cycle through it says 10-3, but in fact, through 10-8 yesterday morning, we made 857,000 door knocks across the state, over 1 million phone calls, and over 2 million text messages. These are directly, on behalf of campaigns, with campaigns, IDing support. Right now, we are in the persuasion phase of the campaign. Traditionally, Democratic campaigns can break down into two major phases of voter contact. First up, post-primary is what we call the persuasion phase, where you reach out to voters who could be on the fence. They might be ticket-splitting Democrats, pro-choice Republicans, independents of all stripes. Dita's point, the independent and non-party affiliated voters are a very large, cross section of the voting public in Pennsylvania. We need to make sure to have those conversations. The second phase that we are beginning next week is get out the vote, or mobilization. And this is when we transition from talking to those folks who are likely to be on the fence to folks who are likely strong Democratic voters who, for whatever reason, are at risk of not casting their ballot, at risk of not turning out. GOTV, is going to be aggressive. We are looking to do 2 passes by doors for mobilization universe. That is every Democratic voter with, I believe, a greater than 80% chance of voting for Democrats, but a less than 80% chance of turning out, using a bunch of weird data science to determine voter propensity. We'll be, centering canvassing, phone banking, and text banking as a part of this. One fun top line is, the very aggressive door knocks have resulted in state house races knocking more doors than all congressional races in the Commonwealth combined. So we're looking to continue to exponentially grow our field programs and talk to voters over the coming weeks. As far as get out the vote, it is, an all hands on deck, full force voter mobilization program. It is the culmination of our campaign's field programs. It's where, those conversations had over the summer with folks on the fence, take on particular importance, because telling somebody to go out to vote in the middle of July, for November, it has relatively limited effects on their actual propensity to turn out. So we want to make sure to continue the conversation with voters, go back to those folks who we've identified as supporters, and make sure they have a plan to vote. And that plan to vote is the crucial part of our get out the vote strategy. This is, continuing in some ways, the Obama 2012 presidential playbook, where, GOTV conversations center voters rationalizing their own behavior, walking through, we have 13 hours on election day for voting. Folks might be working for 8 hours, doing childcare for 5 hours, commuting for an hour and a half. They might have negative 30 minutes to actually cast their vote for Democrats up and down the ballots. And, as a part of our conversations, we want to help folks build in the time in their schedule to cast a ballot, figure out how they're getting to the polls, and asking if they can bring anybody with them to vote, because those interpersonal relationships, the relational method of organizing is, I think, uniquely impactful. It's also, voter education is a key part of get out the vote canvassing. Make sure folks know what their polling place is, where their polling place is, when the polls are open, and, the fantastic candidates up and down the ballot running for office. Big reason as to why is because in 2022, 8 races for the state house were determined by less than 5%. GOTV, to Kadita's point, lets you play with margins, play up margins, and in a Commonwealth where we have a 1-seat majority in the Pennsylvania State House, marginality makes all of the difference. Field programs aren't a one-size-fits-all panacea towards, voter apathy or lack of awareness as to, ability to vote, but it does let you play with marginality. And in those races that are determined by less than 5%, those are what we call field margin races, races that could be determined by a properly executed field program. Why we're doing GOTV is to effectively mobilize our voters. Mentioned conversations in July regarding voting in November are the most effective method of mobilization. Well, that changes drastically as you get closer to the election. In the final 2-3 weeks of the campaign cycle, in particular, mobilization conversations increase like starkly in terms of efficiency for mobilizing voters. The other reason is we want to avoid mobilizing our opponents' voters. That is why we transition away from the persuasion method of campaigning towards mobilization. Persuasion conversations, just as mobilization increases in efficiency as you approach election day, persuasion conversations decrease in efficacy. Plus, you might turn out a Republican super voter by accident, and we can let the House Republican Campaign Committee do that. Justin is our vote by mail director and my deputy in the campaigns department. Justin, would you mind talking a little bit about our vote by mail program and the multiple phases that we have?
Absolutely. And also just to address a question that Christine dropped in the chat. So how closely our state house races coordinate with congressionals that are in their area is largely dependent on like two factors. The first of which is like, is this a competitive congressional that's actually like, has a meaningful campaign? And then the second of which is like, how interested are they in cooperating with us, right? So we have some situations like in Bucks County where Ashley Ehas is running a really strong campaign in PA1, and a lot of our races in Bucks County are working closely with her, right? There are other parts of the state where we have safe incumbent Democrats, and the congressional races don't have much to give other than the money. So it depends like very like district to district and race to race. So but to talk about our vote by mail program, pleasure to meet all of you. Thank you for having me. We, since 2020, or 2019, when Pennsylvania authorized like no excuse mail ballot voting, it has very quickly become a key part of our like organizing infrastructure, where we spend the majority of the summer into the early fall in request generation, where we contact Democrats who have voted by mail in the past but haven't requested yet, and we help them through the request process. Right, like through the throughout this whole process, we are like not only talking to previous mail ballot voters, but also any newly registered Democrats or Democrats who have moved into that district, as well as anyone who has told any races across the Commonwealth, whether it's a congressional, the presidential, Bob Casey, one of us. If they told us they plan on voting by mail and they have not requested, they made it on the list. And then we like reach out to these people, via mail, like ask them to request a mail-in ballot. We have volunteer-powered phone banks where we call them, and we also did multiple rounds of texting through that universe. I believe 3 rounds of calls, 2 rounds of texts, and 2 mailers to the request generation universe. So once ballots hit the doors, which began, I believe, Montgomery County, Allegheny were the first 2 counties to drop their ballots on September 30th. We switched from the request generation to ballot chase, where we are calling Democrats who have requested a mail-in ballot but have not yet returned it, and walking them through the process to make sure that they complete their ballot, vote both sides, and like put that ballot in the secrecy envelope, put the secrecy envelope in the return envelope, sign and date it correctly, and get that back to the Board of Elections before Election Day. So again, we are hitting these people with a set of mailers, 2 passes on the phones at least, and at least 3 passes via text. So we are in frequent communication with these voters. There will come a point in the year where we tell people to stop sending it in the mail, and we say, hey, listen, it's close to Election Day. We recommend you bring it to a drop box or drop it off at your county courthouse, right? So that frequent communication not only allows us to for our messaging to be dynamic as we reach people multiple times, but it also allows us to like have an ear on the ground to figure out who are the people with problems, right? Like who has requested a ballot and it's a week before the election and they have not received it yet, right? Who are the people who they got the ballot, it's too late to mail it back in, they're disabled and can't leave their house, right? By doing this program centralized, we can go and like reach out to a specific race and say, hey, Sarah Agerton, there's like a Democratic voter who like needs help getting their vote cast. Can you send an organizer her way? And like this, like we work really closely on the campaigns to get this all done. Sawyer, can you move on to the next slide? This is just a really quick recap of what we have done so far this year. I just did some addition from last night, and we are actually now up to 367,000 dials for the year so far. As well, that gave us just about 10,000 phone conversations, 270,000 texts. We have identified 15,500 Democratic voters through like this program. We have mailed out applications, follow-up postcards. We have 5 weekly phone banks, a team of myself plus 4 organizers and 6 interns. So like this is a part of our program where we are playing serious ball here. And we are on track to hit at least 500,000 dials, closer to 6 or 7 by the end of the cycle. So to address Marion's question real quick. So if you will have a mail-in ballot and you would like to vote in person, all you need to do is bring your ballot to your polling place, hand it to your judge of elections, and they should allow you to vote normally. Okay, I think that's all I have, Sawyer.
But the addendum to that, to Marion's question though, is if you go in, if you've got the mail-in ballot and you just go in to go vote, you will have to vote conditionally because they do not know whether you've also sent in the mail-in ballot. So it's really important, if that's your plan, to take the ballot with you so they can destroy it there.
Awesome. Hey, thank you, Justin. And then to the big overarching point as to how you can help, we've got two major methods: knocking on doors and making phone calls to voters, encouraging them to sign up to vote by mail. I'm going to send a couple of links in the chat, specifically for Mobilize signups. If you are interested in knocking on doors, we use Mobilize pretty extensively at the state house level for distributing canvas events, phone banks, and text banks across the Commonwealth. The GOTV canvassing begins for us Monday of next week. Next weekend is our first what we call dry run for mobilization, basically running a small scale version of what we're going to be doing over the final 4 days of the election cycle. And we have very aggressive goals for mobilization. We're on track to pass well over 1 million conversations this election cycle, which is more than we did last cycle, which is fantastic. Love continued growth and self-improvement. And we need help to do it. Just matter of fact, this is a really, I don't know, jam-packed election cycle with every level of the ballot, from president to statewide row offices to congressional races, state senate and state house races being contested. There are a number of organizations actively doing the work of having conversations with Democratic voters, helping mobilize them. But in a cycle where with a 1-vote majority, everything kind of lays in the balance for the state legislature, we need help as much as possible having these conversations and hopefully expanding the Democratic majority. We have fantastic candidates to do so, and be it with Sarah or Angela Giral or Stephanie Rafes or Elizabeth Morrow or Anna Thomas or any of the amazing Democratic women running for office, they need your help. And likewise, we're going to send a message in the chat with a public-facing, basically, repository of vote by mail phone banks that we're having. We have 5 a week happening every week between now and Election Day. And please sign up. That's basically what we have.
Thank you. All of the information, the links that people have given, the links to the New Pennsylvania Project, to Mobilize, to all of the things that Sawyer and Justin have talked about, will all be in the wrap-up that you get from Represent. So, but make note of them. It's so important. And I didn't see any other questions that need to be answered right now. So let's go on to our concluding slides, Tiffany. But I want to thank our speakers because I learned a lot by, I learn a lot all the time on these kind of things. You all don't know it, but part of the reason for having these events is I learn. Oh, well. So Represent, we've done our series of talking about civic education and what we talk about and what are your values, and we look statewide. Next slide, please. We're making investments to change Pennsylvania. Do you know, and I want to make sure, Sawyer and Justin know this, we've invested over $700,000 in races across Pennsylvania. And over 500 of that has been to House races. That's a lot of money. It makes us one of the bigger donors in the state. We've looked recently and we realized that people always think of the power of the unions or the power of other special interest groups. Guess what? Represent is one of the stronger special interest groups in the state of Pennsylvania, and the women who are already in the legislature doing things for us. The House majority, they talked, excuse me? Somebody else? Okay. The House majority is currently 102 to 101. That means that every Democrat has to show up for every vote. And it doesn't give them any, people like it if they say, hey, listen, I can't really vote for that ballot, can I just sit this one out? Joanna McClinton makes sure nobody sits out anything. She'd like a little bit of elbow room in there. The Senate is 22 to 28. With our majority, and this is what I like to talk about also, over 400 bills have been passed by the House, this wonderful House majority we have, and they've gone nowhere. And why does that happen? Because they go to a Senate committee and they die there. And the the Republican leads in the Senate have decided they don't even want to talk. So they've passed a bill to raise minimum wage in the House. We're the only Northeast state that still has 7.25 minimum wage. It's gone to the Senate and Labor Committee and it sits there and they refuse to act on it. I put in the chat a link to something that the Dems have put out that shows all the different issues that these bills are. So go to that and we'll make sure that that goes in there. But everything you care about, whether it's the environment, reproductive choice, maternal mortality rates, clean water, all of these issues have been passed common sense gun legislation. They've all been passed by our House and the Senate is not acting. So although we had Sawyer and Justin with the House view, we can do something in the Senate. Next slide, please. Meet our legislators in person. We're still doing some events and we have a big one coming up in Philadelphia. This is one that we did that was lovely on Black maternal mortality. This is the one, okay, go on. This is the one we have coming up and it's our GOTV, Let's Celebrate Women event that's coming up in next week in Philadelphia. So we'll make sure you get the link to that. Next slide. So I just want to remind you, we're in a position right now to change Pennsylvania. I agree with you, Robin. It is so frustrating that good legislation has passed. This House majority has, with only 1 seat majority, they've passed so many things that will be good for Pennsylvanians. And yet nothing gets done because, I hear people talk about, I believe in bipartisanship. I believe that we should be able to work across the aisle. When 400 bills have passed that cannot get a hearing in the Senate, that means we don't have bipartisan legislature and we need to get that both the House and the Senate in Democratic hands and then have our governor sign the legislation. Support us. Go out and support candidates, go out and support the cause, go out and help. We got how much time left, Khadija? 2 weeks to register people to vote? What's the deadline?
Less than 2 weeks. October 21st is the last moment at 11:59 p.m.
So it won't surprise anybody who's listened to Represent Calls to know that I'm pretty obnoxious about some of this stuff. And I just sit and chat with people on the bus and ask them if they're registered to vote. But the next 2 weeks are your time to be pretty obnoxious about it too. You should be asking friends, the children of your friends, the friends of your children, whoever you run into, are they registered to vote and do they have a plan to vote? I understand, Marion, that you'd rather go in and take your ballots in and vote in person. I've already voted. I just wanted to know, I'm hoping a lot of other people on this call today have already voted. I take my ballot to City Hall and I get my I voted sticker. And I know that I count. But do what you need to do. Oh, thank you, Muffy, you voted. Do what you need to do. Make sure you vote, make sure everybody around you votes, and make sure you're doing all you can to make this a successful election. The next breakfast briefing we're going to have will be Wednesday, a week after, or Thursday, the week after election. And we'll talk about how well we did. And we're hoping it's a celebration. We hope that but it depends on us and it depends on the rest of Pennsylvanians to come out and make it happen. So thank you all very much for being on with us today.